Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Jan Hoover, and I'm here this morning with Kaitlyn Langham. Kaitlyn has an incredible story to share with us today, and unfortunately, her husband Jacob couldn't be with us because it's his story as well. So, Kaitlyn, I know you've had a powerful experience where God really was with you through the entire thing.
Mm-hmm.
But like so many stories, sometimes we have to go back to our childhood to set the stage and tell us a little bit about how we got to a certain point. So I think people would love to know a little bit about how you grew up and what that was like.
Yeah, I grew up in a pretty religious family.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of more of a sober attitude about life and about almost everything was much more valued than laughter and joking and fun. And it kind of created in me a desire. I always wanted joy.
Sure.
And I remember looking at other people when we would go places, and I would just think they're so happy. Like,
I want that.
yes, I want that. Yeah.
And so you were from a large family, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And as I understand it, as we've talked in the past, a family member got really ill.
Yes.
And that was really a turning point for you in many regards. Is that right?
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
So it would, like a lot of like brain bleeds or aneurysms, it comes on so fast. They're fine one minute and they're dying the next. And that's how it was. And it took me, I know I asked my siblings like 5 times and never remember them answering me if they had called 911. It just like nothing was processing in my mind. Like
Sure.
it was really scary. We thought he was gonna die. We, begged God to save him.
Sure.
And I believe that he did as a result of our prayers. He was in the hospital for only 10 days, which we were amazed at. And
Sure.
then he came home. And I think it was when he came home that I don't even know where it, like the desire even came in. I was just like, Lord, I don't know what's ahead of me or what's ahead of us, but I really want to thrive, whatever it is. And I just asked him, just teach me to dance in the rain. Like, help me to not let this get me down. And I had no idea that his sickness would last 2.5 years and that the next, 4 years of my life would just be one thing after another after another.
Sure. Yeah, what I remember is that he was quite ill, and that there were some personality changes, and that it was just really hard on the entire family.
It was very difficult.
And certainly for you as well. So what began to happen? So you prayed, let me dance in the rain. And what was it that you were looking for as you think back on it with that?
I always had this desire to just be courageous and strong no matter what I faced. And I think during that time in my life, like during the months that led up to that, I felt more weak and broken than I had ever been. And I don't know, just looking back, I don't even know why. That's just what I wanted. I can't even explain it.
So you have Jacob in your life now. You all get married. Did that bring the joy that you were looking for?
No.
No?
Jacob definitely made me happy, and he
Sure.
was security that I had never had before. He was everything I needed in a man, but it wasn't very far into our marriage that I started to have to face a lot of my childhood stuff. And also during that time, this family member who was sick got better. But by the time that he did, my whole family had pretty much fallen apart. And family members weren't speaking to each other. There was a lot of fighting. It was I didn't know what to do with
Sure.
that. And I got really depressed. And at one point, I said out of frustration and anger, I told Jacob, said, the only good thing I could ever see happening, like when I think about the future and I look ahead at something good to like hang on to, the only thing I saw was if we had a baby.
And what happened?
3 months later, we were pregnant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we were so excited. We were so excited, but definitely scared. I felt like I didn't know what I was doing becoming a mom.
That's what all first moms
yeah,
believe, right? Yeah.
It was pretty crazy. But our first visit to the doctor, we found out there was some complications, but it seemed like there was good outcomes with it. So we thought, I felt like everything was going to be okay, that even if he were to come early, or if, my birth or all of that didn't go as planned, like in the end, it was going to be okay.
Sure.
And Jacob and I, we had a lot of peace with it, even as things got a little more intense. We just felt like God had it all.
Sure.
And we just felt good.
Sure. And so your pregnancy continues. You continue to have signs that certainly you're now high risk, I guess, would be the way to say it.
Yes, I was.
And then kind of what happens at that point?
At 28 weeks, at 26 weeks, we were told he was in the 3rd percentile, which was very small.
Sure.
And I was really worried. We just didn't know what was going to happen. And I guess the biggest thing that I planned for was probably an early birth, that obviously something, he wasn't getting nourished right or something, and we were going to have a C-section, and he was going to come early, and we were probably going to spend time in the NICU.
Sure.
And I was good with that. We didn't have a lot of money, so we weren't getting the nursery set up or anything. We were kind of waiting till after my baby shower.
Sure.
And my appointment to see the perinatal doctor was 2 days before my baby shower. And I went back and forth whether I needed somebody there with me. And in the end, Jacob really needed to work. And we felt so peaceful that I stood in front of the window the day before and put my hand on my stomach, and I said, I know everything's going to be fine. And so I went in the next day by myself, and I could not believe it when they put the ultrasound on my stomach, and that they said there's no heartbeat. I don't even know how to, I just never even, of all the outcomes I could have thought of, I never thought that he wouldn't make it.
Right.
I was devastated.
Of course you were. Absolutely. And you still had to tell Jacob, right? You're there by yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
I called him and couldn't even get the words out. I was on my knees sobbing, and the nurse had to take the phone and tell him.
Yeah.
And she was crying with me. She was holding me. I called my sister and my sister-in-law, and before, I couldn't even tell them what was wrong. I just said, come to the hospital, please.
Right.
And they did. They were there. One of the first decisions I made before Jacob was even able to get there. The hospital was an hour away from where we lived, and before he even got there, I told my sister, I said, I want to take those maternity pictures that I had been planning for. Sure. I wanted to take them at 30 weeks. And she said, okay, and found a photographer, and it's insane the amount of decisions you have to make in that short amount of time. Like, were we going to give birth to him naturally? Were we going to have a C-section? Did we want a funeral? Did we want, like, it's just, it almost feels wrong, just the amount of stuff that is thrown at you, and you're just like, can I just breathe for a second?
Right. I've just had the worst news I can imagine at this point. You know, as we've talked, there's no question in my mind that you have some of the strongest faith of anybody I know, and Jacob as well.
Thank you.
And so you all took a tragedy, an unexpected tragedy, and you looked at it from a very different perspective than most people. And I still to this day don't know how you were able to do it, but you found a way to find joy in all this. Tell us a little bit about that.
I think it's interesting when I talk to other mothers who have lost children and who have been through very difficult things. You would think that the more tragedies you have in your life, the weaker you would become, but it's actually the opposite. And just having been through everything that we already had been through, Jacob has his own story that is remarkable that he came out of the way that he did. I saw God turn that into redemption for me, and a lot of it was from a song that he gave me. And it was interesting because at the hospital during recovery and everything, there was decisions thrown at us about seeing certain family members, and there was a lot of stuff that I just hadn't learned or hadn't figured out how to let go of. And in one moment when Jacob got to the hospital, we were clinging to each other crying, and I looked up at him and said, "Are you okay?" And he said, "I'm okay, I just want you to be okay." And there had been so many times in our marriage that I hadn't been okay. And I looked at him in that moment and I was like, I have to be okay because I love him. And I deserve it, he deserves it, we deserve to be okay. And so it's like I almost started out this whole thing with this resolve that we had been through too much to let this crush us. And that we still deserve joy. And when God gave me this song, it just confirmed that and gave me what I needed to continue. And it said in the song, it's burn the ships. It says burn the ships, cut the ties. And I knew it was just time to cut those ties with my past that had been holding me down, to let it go. And the chorus says, you can dance upon a heartache. And I knew, it's crazy because it was actually a couple months after the whole ordeal in the hospital and everything, and we were just recovering from everything, that I realized that was the answer to my prayer when I prayed when my family member got sick, was that I could dance in the rain. And that and I felt like God was just saying, you can dance on this heartache. And you will be okay. After everything you've been through, you're going to be fine. And this second verse also says, if you need a refuge, I'll be right here. And that was just, there was something so precious about that. It just felt so directly from God. If you need a refuge, I'm going to be right here. And so during my recovery, there was times whenever the same depression that I'd had before would try to creep over me. And every time it was just like, before it got too bad, it was like he was there saying, you can have joy. It does not have to crush you. And so I was able to feel the grief, to cry over it, to go where it hurts and go where I needed to go,
Sure.
but with the faith that he was going to pull me back out of it, that I wasn't going to like go into this deep, dark pit and never return from it.
Never see the light again.
Yes, which is what I was so afraid was going to happen.
You know, so one of the things that I know we've talked about in the past is that there were moments when you and Jacob would just look for the positives in all this.
Mm-hmm.
You would be able to think about God has spared our beautiful son Liam,
Mm-hmm.
right? Perhaps from a number of things.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to share anything about that?
Yeah, we tried. I know it's, for some people, that's a very difficult thing to do. And that was definitely with other things that I had been through, to try to think of the positives. Like I didn't even want to hear them.
Sure.
But there was just this beauty around picturing my son in heaven in this perfect place with a perfect father. And for Jacob and I, having grown up in the families that we did, we experienced a lot of abuse of authority and a lot of, you know, the examples that we had of a father, just, they weren't what you wanted as a father.
Sure.
And so the thought of our son with a perfect father, where we knew in our humanness we were going to fail our child at some point in some way, that we would cause him pain. And the thought that he would never, ever, ever, ever have to experience that was something that we both focused on a lot.
Right.
Like sometimes I would have daydreams of him up there that were I would get so lost in them that sometimes I felt like I was there. And so there was that, and then that we just tried to focus on just the beauty of heaven and the positive aspect of him being there, instead of just looking at it as a loss and death and all of the dark side of it that too often we focus on. And two, there was just little things that we found to be thankful for. One was that we didn't have a nursery full of baby items to have to find out what to do with.
Sure.
I know that all of my friends had gifts in their house, and to this day, I don't know what they did with them. And sometimes I wonder how that was for them.
Well,
I was thankful that I didn't have to
right.
deal
Well,
with it.
because I think what you told me is that one of the things you considered a blessing is that you found out about Liam 2 days before your baby shower.
Mm-hmm.
So you didn't have to.
So we didn't have to go through all of that. We didn't have this room full of reminders. There was a few things that people had given us that now we leave sitting out, and they're just a very subtle, happy, peaceful reminder that he existed, that he lived.
He did live.
Mm-hmm.
And so as we think about it, what is it that you would like to tell those that are watching this morning? So you've learned to dance on heartache, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you've got a lot of powerful examples. Liam has been gone 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
It's a long time, and yet not so long, right?
Yes.
Depending on how you're looking at it. What do you take away from all of this? How would you summarize it?
Well, whenever I was thinking about this video, I thought about the specific things that we did. And I think what's so important is celebrating what you do have instead of just focusing on what you missed. There are times that I sit and I think about him, and I missed his first tooth. I missed putting his feet in the creek behind our house that I really looked forward to. There's a lot that I missed, but there's also so much that I had. I got to feel his kicks. I got to see his heartbeat on that screen. I cherish those things above grieving the things that I lost. And then too, just finding those little things to be thankful for.
Right. Right.
And then there's always a rainbow after the storm.
So tell me what your rainbow is.
Christmas Day we're expecting.
So you were pregnant. Nobody knows at the time that we're taping this.
No.
No. And I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, and Seth is wiping his eyes, right? So there is great joy.
There is.
And I do want to say, I think you and Jacob have been role models through all of this.
Thank you.
And we will all be praying for your Christmas Day miracle. How about that?
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thank you all for joining us. And thank you, Kaitlyn, for sharing a very painful and yet wonderful story of how God redeems us sometimes in the midst of our heartache.
Yes.
And so we will have someone else tomorrow morning for our Voices devotional. Hope you all have a great day.